Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I talk to you about the NBA games that happened today, a lot of good ones. Particularly, I want to talk about the New York Knicks, and I'll get into exactly why I want to focus on the Knicks in this video in a couple seconds, but I have to start this video with praise to Russell Westbrook. If you've watched any of my videos before, you probably know that Russell Westbrook is my favorite NBA player of all time, and he had one of his best career performances tonight. 21 rebounds, 24 assists. He had 20 assists through 3 quarters. I was really hoping he was going to be able to break the assist record. It just didn't end up happening. But this was one of Russell Westbrook's best games in his entire career, especially after he started the season kind of slow with that injury. He revealed today that it was indeed a torn quad, not just a quad injury. His quad was fully torn when he started the season, and people called him washed. I told people wait until he gets healthy. He is healthy, and he's playing some of the best basketball he's played in a while. It's so good to see Russ back and healthy. He's leading the Wizards to the best record in the NBA since April 1st, I believe now, beating the Pacers. Another really high-scoring game where the Pacers, credit to them, did look really out of it, but they ended up clawing their way back. It was just too much between Westbrook, Beal. Rui Hachimura has been really good recently. And for a lot of this season, it was kind of looking like Thomas Bryant might end up being like one of their third guys. But after he went down with injury, Rui Hachimura really has stepped up and played that role. He's been a great member of the front court, a guy that Russ and Beal can rely on a lot of the time. More often than not, he is the third most reliable guy on that roster because Davis Bertans struggles a lot more than he needs to for this team. But Russ needed that shout out. I'll talk more about the game in a second, but I wanted to preface the video with talking about him. Like I said, though, I want to focus this video on the New York Knicks. They beat the Memphis Grizzlies tonight 118-104, which isn't a very remarkable thing. The Knicks are 9 games above 500, 37-28, and the Grizzlies are 32-32. So it's not like some massive accomplishment or anything like that. But with tonight's win, the New York Knicks secured their first above 500 season since 2013, which is an incredible feat, especially for me because I really didn't I wasn't super passionate about basketball until about 2014. I watched it here and there before that, but until 2014, I really wasn't super in depth into basketball. And so since I've been following the NBA super closely, I have not seen a season where the Knicks are good. If we're going off the fact that to be good, you have to be over 500, which I think is a metric most of us can probably agree on. I haven't seen the Knicks be good since I've become a big NBA fan. And it's really cool. I really like that the Knicks are good. And it's not just because I like this roster a lot, but it's cool to see this team kind of return to glory. When the Los Angeles Lakers were bad for the first few seasons of my NBA following, it was kind of weird because even though I hadn't seen them good, I knew the Lakers were historically good. I knew they were a long historical franchise. They had this long history, and ultimately they have been good for a lot more time than they've been bad. And so when they returned to greatness with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, I was like, cool, this is awesome. I'm happy to see the Lakers back. And I feel the same way about the Knicks. It's cool to see this storied franchise with in a place that a lot of people consider the mecca of basketball, rising back up to the occasion in a season where a lot of people didn't expect them to do much. I'm going to call myself out to start this section talking about the game. I, before the season, predicted the Knicks to be the 14th seed in the Eastern Conference. I thought they were going to be just above the Pistons at 15. And I thought it was another deep lottery season for them, a kind of a rebuilding year once again, which they've been doing, obviously, since 2013. And they proved me wrong in every facet. Julius Randle, he is the biggest story, of course, for the Knicks team, but there's so many other things I could talk about. But before I talk about anything else, I have to talk about Julius Randle. And that is because he has had some of the greatest improvement I have seen from a player in a course of one season ever. It's not even close who the most improved player is right now. It's Julius Randle. Because if you remember to start the season, Julius Randle was a guy that a lot of people saw as a trade asset. And even a contract that would be hard to move. I personally thought, okay, when Julius Randle started the season playing well, I thought, oh cool, he's going to get his trade value up for the New York Knicks. And he's a guy that they could end up trading at the deadline, trying to get some value back for him so that they can return to the bottom of the conference, get a good lottery pick, and then maybe try and compete in a season or two. Instead of kind of just putting up numbers, he got better and better and better and better. And now he's an all-star and he should probably be on an all-NBA team. And there are even some people who talk about him in the MVP conversation. I don't think he's quite there, but I do think he is worthy of being on an all-NBA team, and I would not be surprised to see him there. That's how good he's been this season. He went from an asset that a lot of people weren't even sure if anyone would be interested in, because he's making a decent bit of money, not a ton or anything like that, but he doesn't have a small contract. And with the way he played last season, he was a lot of times a negative for the Knicks. Knicks fans hated Julius Randle. last season. There's some Knicks fans are going to deny that. I was on Twitter. I know y'all did not like Julius Randle. I understand that, and that's perfectly fine. And now they love him because he's playing super good basketball, and that's understandable that the way that they flipped. And his play has been so good. He is such a winning player. He makes all the right plays. Probably the biggest improvement for Julius Randle is his ability to create for his teammates and make his teammates better. Got to give credit to those guys as well. They have been improving, but Julius Randle's improvement, his ability to get teammates easy shots, his ability to, he has a lot of gravity, so he sucks in defenses and he forces people to focus on him. What the Knicks have really lacked since they lost Carmelo Anthony was that guy. They've lacked a guy. They had Kristaps for a little bit, and then Kristaps ended up getting moved, and his tenure wasn't even that productive anyways because he dealt with an injury. And so, since Carmelo Anthony left, they didn't have a guy that New York really was drawn to. They needed someone on this team to be a focal point. And RJ Barrett maybe down the line will end up being that focal point, but for right now it's Julius Randle. And that really elevated this team because this team has some solid role players. But if you don't have a star player in the NBA, you're not going to get anywhere. It's just the nature of basketball. It's the nature of the sport, nature of the league. You need a star, an all NBA caliber player to really elevate your team. And that's what Julius Randle has done for this team. RJ Barrett is having a way better season than I thought he was going to. I wasn't quite sure where I had him. I knew he was going to have a better season, but his jump, his improvement from last season to this season, especially efficiency-wise, that's the biggest thing. RJ Barrett last season was very, very inefficient, and this season he's really stepped it up. And part of that is because Julius Randle has gotten him some better looks, and he's taken some of the pressure off of RJ Barrett to come in immediately into New York and be that number one guy. He doesn't have to worry about that anymore because Julius Randle is there to help take that pressure off of him, and everyone sees Julius Randle as the star of this team. Nobody thinks that RJ Barrett right now is better than Julius Randle. Can he be in a few years? Yeah. But it's way better for his young career for him to get the opportunity to grow behind Julius Randle and improve as a player before stepping out into that superstar role, which I do think he has the potential to do at some point. Outside of those two guys, I'm going to give a shout out to Nerlens Noel. He's been a great defensive presence. He's dealing with an injury right now. I hope he's able to come back soon. I think his x-rays were negative on his ankle, so hopefully that's good news for Nerlens Noel. I hope he's able to come back soon. But I mentioned that this team does have a lot of good role players, and I'm going to shout out some of them. Reggie Bullock, a guy who has dealt with a lot of personal issues. If you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, you can go ahead and look it up. There's a lot of stuff that has happened to him recently, so I'm really happy to see him finding a role here on this team. Alec Burks, really solid player. Derrick Rose. When they traded for Derrick Rose, I thought it was dumb. Derrick Rose has been phenomenal for the New York Knicks. I didn't like it because I thought Emmanuel quickly needed more minutes. I thought it was important to prioritize the development of Emmanuel quickly over bringing in Derrick Rose to help them win. And that is still an argument to be made, but they very easily coexisted. They still both get minutes. Emmanuel quickly, for example, tonight played 16 minutes. Derrick Rose did end up playing 27, which is a lot, but that's understandable. Derrick Rose had 25 points tonight, and since picking him up, they've been significantly better than they were when they didn't have him. So he deserves a lot of credit. He's trying to make a late Sixth Man of the Year run. I think it's a little too late, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got some votes. Emmanuel quickly, like I mentioned, he's really been a phenomenal rookie, and I hope Obi Toppin is continuing to get continues to get minutes as the season progresses. Maybe he'll get some here and there in the playoffs, probably not too much, but I do think he should get some more run time. But overall, this Knicks team has just been really good, and I wanted to give them a shout out in this video because I've talked a lot about Julius Randle, but I don't think I've talked a lot about the New York Knicks as a whole. And another guy I have to give a shout out to is Tom Thibodeau. I don't know if he's going to be Coach of the Year. He definitely deserves some consideration for it. Honestly, if I have to give out the award right now, I'm giving it to Monty Williams of the Phoenix Suns. But I do think Tom Thibodeau deserves a lot of credit for the way that this Knicks team has turned themselves around. And a coach is really important to an NBA team. We've seen examples in the last season or two, especially, of how much changing a coach and bringing in a superior coach to kind of shift the culture really affects an NBA team. We've seen it this season with the Atlanta Hawks, who I could talk about in a second, who are also currently the New York Knicks playoff matchup in that first round. I would love to see that series, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get into the Hawks. But Thibodeau has really turned this team around. He has them. They found an identity. The Knicks teams of the last couple seasons, in addition to just not being great basketball teams, have felt like they've really lacked an identity. And right now, they're completely honed in on that hard-nosed defensive, we are going to fight you mentality. They played the Grizzlies tonight, and they did a perfect grit and grind, impression is the word I'm going for. This team plays grit and grind style basketball. Now, do they shoot a bunch of threes? Yes. Are they more fast-paced than those grit and grind teams? Yes. But the way that they really hang their hat on defense, focusing on that side of the ball, and if they're going to do anything, they're going to make it really hard for you to score. They might have some nights where they struggle to put up points, but you're also going to struggle as well if they're going to. That's just the way the Knicks play. They've been so good. I'm really happy to see them succeeding, and basketball is just better when the Knicks are better. It just is. I know that's kind of sounds like big market bias, but when the New York Knicks are better, same with like the Brooklyn Nets, same with the Los Angeles Lakers, when those bigger name teams are, or teams in like bigger markets are better, it's just better for the league. And it's cool to see the Knicks back. I'm happy that Knicks basketball is back. So that's my shout to the New York Knicks. After that, I guess I'll talk next about the Warriors-Pelicans game. They did that Marvel broadcast, which was weird, but also kind of fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed like the whole hero points concept. I love that Draymond Green ended up winning that. He had a phenomenal game too. This was like a completely typical Draymond Green stat line. One of his more impressive stat lines in a very long time. 10 points, 13 rebounds, 15 assists, triple-double, multiple steals, multiple blocks. He was just doing it all for the Warriors tonight, and this game was really never that close. They kind of closed the gap, the Pelicans did, in the second half, but it really was just never that close. And that was not only because of Draymond, but because Curry had 41, 4, and 8, Wiggins had 26, Juan Toscano-Anderson, a guy who that is not talked about nearly enough by basketball fans as a great role player, 14, 5, and 4. This was one of the best team showings that the Warriors have had probably all season. Kelly Oubre, dealing with an injury, did not play tonight, and even without him, they still did a phenomenal job. Zion put up Zion numbers with 32, 8, and 1. The Pelicans it's just not a great fit. This roster just does not fit well together, and as they continue to lose games and they continue to show how little this roster fits together, it brings up a lot of questions about the roster construction, what moves they're going to have in the offseason, and I think the Pelicans are in for one of the most interesting offseasons in all of basketball. And that's followed by another team that I think has a really interesting offseason ahead of them in the Chicago Bulls, a team that lost by 12 to the 76ers. I'm not going to talk too much about the Sixers. This was just a good win for them. Joel Embiid did not play very well. This was probably one of his worst games of the season. And even still, they won by double digits. It really wasn't that close. The Bulls still missing Zach LaVine due to health and safety protocols. Hope he's able to come back soon because that team's just way more fun when he's on the court. But ultimately, this Bulls team has a lot of work to do in the offseason. They could target a guy like Alonzo Ball from the New Orleans Pelicans that we just talked about, but the trade for Vucevic was really like a win-now type move. And you can't make a win-now type move and follow it with an offseason where you don't do much, especially for a team that is not playing as well as they hoped to. I personally thought they were going to end up being a playoff team once they did pick up Vucevic, and it really just has not materialized. A lot of that does have to do with the fact that Zach LaVine is not playing right now. He is in health and safety protocols. But even when he has played, this team just hasn't felt like they have an identity yet. It feels like they're still trying to figure things out, which is perfectly fine because when you bring in another all-star to a team, it takes time. You have to be patient with these teams. But it's tough because the Bulls gave up their first-round pick this year, unless it's in the top 4, which is absolutely possible with the new lottery odds. But if it's not inside the top 4, the Bulls could easily lose a lottery pick for a season of not much. And Vucevic is going to start declining. I don't think it'll be very soon, but I think it's coming eventually. So they've got to make win-now moves because right now they're pretty far from contention. They've got to get a better point guard. I like Kobe White, but I don't know if he's quite there yet. He's not going to be a contending level point guard next season. He's going to need more time. I like him better right now as a six-man. They've got good role players like a Thaddeus Young, for example. I think Daniel Tice is someone they should really bring back. But they've got to put better guys around Zach LaVine and Vucevic if they want to not have the Vucevic trade end up being a big mistake. They've got a big offseason ahead of them. Games like this against the Sixers just show how far they are from being able to compete on a night-to-night basis with these higher-level teams. I guess next I'll talk about Lakers Nuggets next. I'm wearing a Lakers shirt, actually, so it's only appropriate I think I talk about this game, particularly because my last video last night was about the Los Angeles Lakers and what they needed to do different. And I think Frank Vogel watched my video or something, or from the adjustments he made tonight, it looked like he listened, or at least he saw all the people on Twitter talking about pretty similar things to what I talked about, and he listened to some of them. Because Marc Gasol played a lot tonight, and he needed to. He was a team-high plus 17. The second highest plus minus on the team was plus 7. It wasn't even close. When Marc Gasol was in this game, the Lakers went up by double digits. When they took Marc Gasol out towards the end of the game and put in Drummond, the Nuggets made it like a 2-point game. And then they put Marc Gasol back in, and there was just not a chance the Nuggets could win anymore. It's night and day when you have him out there on the court. Drummond I think can be effective at times with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, but it's a very limited role. I've talked about this in my video before, but Drummond, Gasol, and Harrell all have very important roles. I think Gasol needs to be their starting center. He has to be. Better defender, better playmaker. He can work the ball around the court, especially when you do not have LeBron James on the court. Marc Gasol's playmaking is really important because outside of LeBron James, this team doesn't have a lot of great playmaking. Marc Gasol is one of their better playmakers on the roster, and he's got to have the ball in his hand a lot of times. He is great at doing wraparound screens. He throws great passes. He gets guys open with his passes at times, and he has a big body, which allows him to really move defenses, force them to commit to certain things that they might not want to, and ultimately create opportunities for his team. When you don't have LeBron on the court, Gasol becomes infinitely more important. And that was very clear tonight. And I'm glad that Frank Vogel ended up closing the game with Gasol. I was worried when he took Gasol out towards the end of the game that he was going to commit to Drummond fully. I thought he was going to say, okay, Drummond, go out and close this game. And I thought the Lakers were going to lose. And they didn't because Gasol came back in. Additionally, Anthony Davis had easily his best performance since coming back from injury, 25 points, and one of the most insane blocks I've ever seen on Campazzo at the end of the game. Campazzo had a 3-point opportunity to try and cut it to a 1-point game. Lakers end up winning by 4 with about 8 seconds left, and Campazzo shoots it. But he takes a couple seconds to load because the closest defender is Anthony Davis, who's in the paint. And Anthony Davis takes one step and jumps from right outside of the paint to block Campazzo on a 3-point attempt. It was incredible. If you did not see it, please go look up that highlight. It was one of the most impressive blocks I've seen in a while. And that's the Anthony Davis I know. That's the Anthony Davis that makes this Lakers team super dangerous. If he continues to look like that, all my worries in last video kind of start to disappear. Obviously, there's still problems with the Lakers having tough matchups because they've fallen in seeding a lot. But if Anthony Davis is playing like Anthony Davis and LeBron James is able to get healthy and play healthy, this Lakers team is probably still the best team in the Western Conference. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with a tougher schedule. But it's going to be hard for me to pick the Lakers or any team over the Lakers in a 7-game series if Anthony Davis and LeBron return to health. AD looks like he's on his way back. We'll have to see with LeBron. On the Nuggets side of the ball, this was just a tough game. The Lakers had a great performance tonight. Jokic had a good performance, but it felt like Gasol did the best job I've seen of almost anyone recently in shutting down Jokic, forcing him to take tough shots, forcing him to make tough decisions. Great game from Gasol. Happy to see him playing. Spurs Jazz, I'll talk about very briefly. Really just what I want to say in this game is if you want to see how impactful Rudy Gobert is to a basketball game, go watch this game. This was one of Rudy Gobert's most impressive defensive performances I've ever seen. The Spurs were literally afraid to take layups because of Rudy Gobert. You can go look up videos of it. The Spurs were not going in the paint, and that's one of the biggest things that Rudy Gobert does is he deters shooters. He deters people from driving to the paint because they're so scared they're going to get blocked or they don't know how they're going to get it up and over Rudy Gobert that they just instead settle for tough jumpers. They settle for 3-pointers when they could get easier looks on the inside, and they just don't go for them because Gobert might just block you anyways. I believe he had 25 and 14 in this game. This was a great game from Gobert. Like I said, if you want to see how good he is, because there's a lot of memes out there, there's a lot of conversation about, oh, what does Rudy Gobert really do? Watch this game. If you watch this game, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And finally, I want to talk about Magic Pistons. Pacers Wizards I was going to talk about, but the fact that I covered the Russ thing, I don't really want to talk about this game too much. It was a pretty good bounce back effort from the Pacers. Or not bounce back, I guess, after beating the Thunder by 57 points. But they still are pretty beat up, and they're still trying to get healthier, and so putting up 141 is a big accomplishment. Great game from Sabonis, a 32-19 game, 33 points for Karis LeVert, 15 for McConnell, 15 for Aaron Holiday, 15 for Justin Holiday. All around solid performance for them. It just was not enough to compete with Russ. Like I said, 14 points, 21 rebounds, 24 assists. Bradley Beal, 26, 5, and 6-2. This was just one of the Wizards' better games that they've had pretty much all season. Finally, Trailblazers Hawks. The Hawks are tough. The Hawks are a nice team. I really like watching this Hawks team. The Blazers cannot stop anyone. The Blazers have no defense whatsoever, and the Hawks just absolutely disposed of them a lot of times on the offensive side of the ball. Danilo Gallinari had a great game. I think he's going to be really important for that team going into the playoffs because he's been there before, he's done it. And this Hawks team has a lot of inexperience, which may be something that hurts them in the long run. But right now they'd play a Knicks team that also has a lot of inexperience. And I'd love to see the Hawks and Knicks play round one. That's the main thing I want to say in this about this game, is that the more I think about that matchup, the more I love it. Two teams that have not been very successful recently, hungry, young, looking for an opportunity to make, because one of them will make it to the second round. And that's a huge accomplishment for two teams that no one saw making it to the second round. So we'll see if they're able to do that. Shout out to the Atlanta Hawks. Shout out to shout out to Nate McMillan, who took Lloyd Pierce's job. The Hawks have turned it around, and it's also really fun to see them good. I'm excited to see Trae Young play in some playoff basketball. It's going to be fun. But that being said, I think that's all I wanted to say. Let me know what your takeaways were from the game. Let me know what you thought about the Marvel broadcast on the Warriors-Pelicans game. I thought that was kind of fun. Let me know what you think about the Lakers, and let me know what you think about the Knicks being back. Is the Knicks being back really good for basketball like I think it is? Let me know in the comment section below. I will see you guys later. Real one, say it back.